I have no intentions here of exhausting my readers with all the information I've gathered, but would like to give a fairly comprehensive, if not empirical, overview of discussions in the Calder between the 21st of the 4th, 2015 and the 23rd of the 4th, 2015. I'm writing this, or beginning to write this, at 11:13 on the 23rd of the 4th, 2015. But for the sake of both time, continuity, and evolution, we'll be updating this editing and writing sections as the day unfolds. All deletions will be included in footnotes for the sake of generosity, with those that are most obviously important included as strike-throughs or erasure in some measure. The concept of architrace must comply with both that necessity and that erasure. It is in fact contradictory and not acceptable within the logic of identity. The trace is not only the disappearance of origin within the discourse that we sustain, and according to the path that we follow, it means that the origin did not even disappear. It was never constituted except reciprocally by a non-origin, the trace, which thus becomes the origin of the origin. Derrida, 1967. The residency at this near halfway stage has shifted its focus slightly and become something of a test of technique. Given that this is physically the largest space and the longest period of time I've worked over, with the intentions of documenting the work of others, it has had to change. It is also the most exposed my contributions to this project have been, and the most exposed I have been as a documentary archivist. The proposal to record discussions has shifted somewhat simply because, in a space such as this, where people are truly visitors to the exhibition and to the arts, conversation is almost achievable. Where I intended before to use a microphone to record thoughts and ideas, it's been used solely to record the space in relation to my own experience. The reactions have been recorded through text after the fact and on reflection, which has allowed me to be more honest in my presentation and more honest in my discourse, and in turn allowed participants to be honest in theirs. The result of this is something I am only currently able to describe as ephemeral discourse, and while I have never personally enjoyed ephemera and seen it largely as an excuse for misunderstanding the role of the bricoleur, in this case it has been crucial to my role as the bricoleur. Taking a more empirical approach to recording, documenting these ephemeral discourses, and presenting something that is slowly becoming a true archive of idea. Another thing to note is that where I was intending on naming participants, where willing, of course, the freedom of not recording gives something of a legal freedom to express their opinions without attributing it to individuals who may, were they recorded, be unwilling to share certain opinions on certain works or institutions. It's also important to note that I've tried at all times to remain impartial, and any opinions expressed are simply opinions of individuals and not reflections on works or institutions. I simply make the point to express my gratitude at participants' honesty during this residency's first week. Something I haven't really touched on before I review this backlog of ephemeral discourse is the Hannah More quote that spurred my involvement in this project, a quote that plays at repeated intervals through the building in the voice of Amelia Crouch, 2015, nor stamp hard on the ground neither. Now there, said he, pointing his finger, I make a comma, and there, pointing to another spot where a more decided turn is proper, I make a colon. At another part, where an interruption is desirable to break the view, a parenthesis. Now a full stop. And then I begin another subject. More H. The statements of Brown here imply the physical folly as text, something I've always wished to display the other way around, where text is fundamentally follied, a positive that makes it redundant in some senses but crucial in others. Brown makes his structures and his landscape appear through that medium, utilising poetic structure in his deliverance of space. This has been a topic not well discussed so far, and I fear one that will not be picked up on much more regularly than it has. Mapping exercises 1 to 3 have taken landscapes as a whole, and while Amelia's film does touch on this folly, and Ruth's physically embodies one, the emphasis is on space and has led most discussions towards landscape. Brown and the structure of the follies of youth as a unit. The remainder of this text a point reached neatly at the end of a page. We'll look further into participants' contributions and the discourse structures used to gather them. As I've mentioned in passing throughout my daily reviews of this residency, recording has been an issue. Initially, I was planning on a formal recorded discussion, something that's worked well in the past at openings, but have abandoned this due to the quality of responses I was receiving. For the purpose of continuity, I've not included those recordings on YouTube, or in the table, as they did not provide an impartial review of the exhibition. They were almost all complimentary and none reflect the participants' response to their experience. Just miniature reviews. I set out here, writing in situ at the Calder for clarification, knowing that to some extent I was going to have to evolve a plan, and thankfully participants have been incredibly responsive, allowing me to enter a discourse with around 3/4 of the exhibition visitors, though I think I have to give credit to the exhibition itself for that, and gathering a variety of information, thoughts and ideas. I've been invited to exhibitions while sat there. I thought I'd hope to be able to make it to the Sculpture Circle exhibition at Hebden Bridge in May. I've learned about feminist history, Poussin, acting techniques, the history of the Calder, but crucially gathered research points from visitors about Brown and about the landscape's history. 47 contributors over 3 days is not bad at all, the technical way of putting it, but does leave me with something of a dilemma. I still need this to be accessible as a piece of writing, and review 47 discussions has the potential to mislead that intention. So here I will try my best to condense the information and select the discussions for review, something I will do with bias towards the discussions that I value most. The first participant I spoke to during the residency was very critical of contemporary art, and the way artists present themselves and their ideas through a maze of what he called Christian hyperbole. It was not an easy discussion to be affronted with at the outset of the residency, and led to a fear that perhaps I was guilty of this, which I might well be and certainly would be in his opinion. Fortunately for the Follies of Youth, though, his critique was aimed mostly at Linda Benglis, not us. To say that this visitor was not angry would do him a disservice. He was outraged at the state contemporary art has found itself in, though I would defend a general contemporary art in saying that the Linda Benglis exhibition is not an example of current practice, but an archival exhibition. His offence was at the honesty of art, though, believing there to be a lowering in the morals of the artist who could present work through afterthought. And I would agree with him that this is a negative point, but would not agree that his views reflect on high proportions of the creative industries. It was unclear where his anger really lay. But what I took from this was that discussions were not going to revolve around our exhibition entirely, and that was a good thing. 2 visitors that approached me, I guess assuming I was in residency, began telling me of the master of Beaumont's bizarre history of children born out of wedlock and their mother's annuity chase. This example was not interesting because of its content, which was interesting in equal measure, but because they were not aware of the exhibition in the first place. The visitor had stumbled across the Calder space, having a fairly strong knowledge of Brown, and had really taken our work to heart, finding memories in it of time spent cataloguing Whitley Beaumont's wills, diaries, etc. They contributed some great research points, including that of Beaumont's ownership, once being lost in a bet over a race from London to Yorkshire, and the financial struggles that were raised by responsibilities to bastard children. Along with several others simply stumbling across the space, they were able to lead a discourse about Brown and his landscapes that I could not have anticipated. There are visitors to the exhibition that know local history and who have enlightened me with information relating to the project, and also those who enlightened me with the day-to-day. I could not have achieved this with a microphone, and it would not have been right to be the artist in situ. I presented myself with as much credence as I deserved, a discursive resident, as an artist, as a writer, I hope an honest claim, and tried to give information where I could, but importantly as a sounding board that spoke back on their ideas. This approach has let me get closer to conversations than I could have imagined, and the tangents that are beginning to appear and cross through days will hopefully cross through weeks and present a discourse that readers can feel included in.